Welcome to Mending Piece by Piece, a podcast dedicated to helping you mend piece by piece after experiencing loss. I'm your host, Linda Falasco, a therapist with over 30 years of experience specializing in loss and grief and a lifetime of lived experience. I will start by sharing my personal story of trauma, loss, and grief, and will also include honest interviews with others who have experienced loss and who have found strength and growth afterwards. So here we go, giving a voice to trauma, loss, and grief as we learn together to mend, even if it's piece by piece. Please note, this episode contains depictions of death and suicide. We understand that some may find these activating and/or disturbing. Please check the show notes for more detailed descriptions and additional resources. If you or someone you love is struggling with thoughts of suicide, please call the Suicide Crisis Lifeline at 988. I can remember those first few days of first week feeling these feelings that, wow, I've never had before, ever. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish this on anybody, having this kind of loss. And what I learned over the years is you have loss and unresolved loss, and then you have something else happen, another loss, they just kind of pile on each other. And with this, I that shock that I talked about earlier, like I still was in shock. I still was like, this isn't happening. There was like bargaining going in my head. But I remember being so anxious, like skin crawling anxious. I couldn't sleep. Told you I was afraid. I'd laugh. I'm still kind of afraid at times of ghosts. But I was afraid when the people started coming and my friends came, and um, I felt better. I felt safer. But yeah, like I was afraid. Everything inside me just felt shaky and just not right. And my heart hurt. And that pain would get worse as the time went on. And I talk about it a lot. And I was in the middle of grad school. I'm not sure if I had said that yet. I was on summer break. I was going to school to be a licensed clinical social worker and wanted to be a therapist. And when I went back to school, I wrote a lot. All my research papers seemed to be on that topic after that. And I remember writing about that hole in your heart that just doesn't ever feel like it's going to kind of be whole again. But when people talk about heartache, it's real. It's real. Like, it isn't just a saying like my heart aches because I'm missing that person. My heart actually hurt. It hurt. I couldn't breathe at times and I was shaky, and the sadness and um, just everything just was so intense. And here I was trying to like keep it all together though, and trying to make sure that I was like, all right, I got to get, like I said, I got to get things done. But inside I was a mess, complete mess. And we were preparing, obviously, for the funeral and making sure we had everything. And I remember saying, I need to say something. I didn't know at the time that's called a eulogy. And again, nobody really sat down with us. And maybe if they did, I don't remember. I know the priest he was probably the only one who was like, here's how things can go. And I remember saying, can I say something? He was like, of course. So I wanted to say something. I didn't know what I wanted to say, but I felt like I had to. I had to speak about my brother or something. Isn't that what people do? And that day, well, before that day came, I was so busy and there were people around and I had so much going on. I couldn't find time, or my mind wouldn't quiet down to allow me to jot some things down. So I remember taking a walk and saying to, people around, I got to be by myself right now, and I'm okay. And I walked down to my parents lived like right, not on a canal, but across from one. So I walked down a little bit at the edge of a canal and found a big rock I could sit on by the water. And I just started jotting some things down that I would say about my brother. And that's when a lot of the tears started coming, because I was realizing he's gone. He's really gone. My brother's 22. This is when we're supposed to like be friends and hang out, and you're past those teen years and childhood years where you guys are like doing your own thing, or you're fighting a lot. But I wasn't going to have that. And that was really hard. And I was remembering things, and the guilt, survivor guilt, is real. I think I felt that right in the beginning. Besides the shoulda, coulda, woulda, I should have done something, should have known. But then the guilt of like, remember a time when we were little, 6, 7, maybe 8. We were jumping on the couch and clock broke, fell off the wall and broke. And I let my brother take the blame for that. He got in trouble. I think he got beat. Look, I'm crying now over it. That guilt is horrible. It still sometimes is. Like, I was thinking then, like, if I would have said it was my fault, maybe he wouldn't have killed himself. That's the stuff I started thinking about. If I was there, maybe he wouldn't have done this. If I wasn't mean to him, if I let him play with my stuff, if I didn't fight with him, I had to go through so much in my head. And just talking about now, my heart hurts. It's really heavy. It really hurts. And I hope he knows we were just kids. And I know that that's not why he did it, but it's hard because you hold on to that stuff. And that's what I learned is it's kind of normal in this abnormal grief that I'm going through. And the woulda, coulda, shoulda. So I'm trying to come up with stuff to write. And then I'm like, well, you should have done this. My brother had called a few months before and asked if he could come stay with us. And I said no. And it wasn't because I didn't want him to stay with us. I already had my brother Michael before he ended up incarcerated. I had Michael the year prior up living with us. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. Michael got in trouble up here. He stole my husband's truck. He had a runaway girl from Florida come up to our place. Like, she was 14 herself or something. It was a disaster. And I was like, I can't have this again. Like, that's not fair. It's not fair to Rob. Yeah, so I was like, can't you stay at Nana's? He was like, no. And I don't know. I wonder, was he struggling then? And that's part of, he just needed to get out. Because if I knew that, I would have made it work. And my brother Jeff was not like that. He was not Michael. And that ate at me. And that's the stuff I was writing. I'm like, I'm sorry. And I didn't know. And that would play out for a really long time. But I was finally able to, after going through that, to jot down some things and to try to remember like some fun, good things in my brother's character. And I was able to do that. And with this grief, and I think a lot of people have it with grief, it's real hard to have space for that, the good memories, like these this grief just wants to like take over everything. And I was able though, and I'm glad I was able to do that. I was able to find it somewhere in my brain, the good times. Like my brother he was such a kind, compassionate, sensitive. I know that's not, guys don't like to hear it, but he was really sensitive and caring. He loved animals. He cared about people. He cared about animals. And he was like sweet. He he had a hot temper. I'll give you that. We all do. It's not a positive trait. Yeah, but we all have that temper. But like, honestly, if you were his friend, then he would do anything for you. And he was funny. I remember growing up and him and I just we would watch, that's when MTV first came out, and we'd watch these videos and talk about it. And then I remember there were different dances that were out and both of us trying to learn how to dance. We both did not dance well. Well, he probably danced better than I did. But I was able to remember a lot of that stuff and just some of those good memories. And my brother's athletic, very athletic. Didn't have to really do much and excelled at it. He was just really good at sports. But he did struggle. And that's the hard part, is that he had a lot of these good traits, and I don't know if he always saw them. I don't know if he was able to see that there was so much goodness there. They moved to the Keys, and I think that he had a hard time. My brother just was finding himself. He had a great group of friends. He had a girlfriend for a couple years and was working with my dad at the time. And really, he was happy because when he was younger, he struggled. He had a learning disability. He was quiet, like to himself. So making friends was a little hard at times. And again, growing up the way we did, I understand it now. There was just a lot of trauma. So it was hard for him. So it was so good to see him have this girlfriend and be happy and have this big group of friends. And, he was out doing things. And then they moved and he lost all that. And that was really, really, really hard for him. He was broken. He was just heartbroken. And I know that was a big piece. And he came back up here a little bit, but it wasn't the same because he didn't have his home base. Tried to stay with my grandma. So him and I too, we kept passing each other. Like the last time we really lived together was probably right before I left for college and when I came home, because we would pass by. Like when I went down to Florida after graduation, he moved up here. And then when I moved back up, he was there, but we didn't really see each other for a while, and he moved back. So like that was the last time like we were together as a family too. And that was hard, just remembering all that. But like I said, I was able to get some things down. I was able to write. And I wanted just to share that stuff about my brother. Because one thing I do tell people, especially with this type of loss, is like, yes, we all talk about this kind of grief and the pain that we have and this stigma and it's just the why and all this stuff. But let's spend some time too remembering their life. They had a whole life. They had a whole personality that was not just this. Sometimes we get stuck in just thinking that, just this loss. But there's so much more about my brother, Jeff. And yeah, I was able to jot some things down. So, are you currently navigating the difficult journey of grief? Are you searching for support and guidance to help you heal? Then listen up, because we have something special for you. Introducing Mending Piece by Piece workbook and journals. They are more than just books. They're compassionate companions designed to support you through your grief journey, one step at a time. These invaluable resources are not just workbooks and journals. They're crafted to honor your grief journey without judgment or impatience. With Mending Piece by Piece, you'll find educational information to help you understand the complexities of loss and grief, shared in a factual yet deeply empathetic manner. Whether you've lost a loved one to suicide or you're navigating grief in general, there's a specific edition for you. Choose Mending Piece by Piece after a suicide loss, guided grief workbook and journal to heal the survivor's heart, or Mending Piece by Piece, a workbook and journal for navigating grief with hope. And the best part, you can find both editions on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, ready to accompany you on your grief journey towards healing and hope. And the best part, you can find both editions on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, ready to accompany you on your journey towards healing and hope. Remember, your grief journey is unique and deserves to be honored. Let Mending Piece by Piece be your guide as you navigate the complex process of grief and healing. Next day was the funeral, and I was going, I'm pretty sure my brother Michael was with us in this car, and it was my Rob and my girlfriend Sherry, and it was raining, and in the Keys it rains and it stops. So it was raining, and we're going over I can't remember, I think it might have been the 7 Mile Bridge. It was one of the bridges. And we're almost like there, and the rain had stopped, and there was like a rainbow. I think it was a double rainbow. And at that time, we had Tears in Heaven on the radio. I think it was the tape because we were gonna have it played at the funeral. And I just remember being like, okay, all right, Jeff, like it just gave me some hope, like maybe he's here and he's okay. And it felt good. And everybody noticed it. We were all like, wow, look at that rainbow. And that song was on. That kind of was cool. But now we get to this funeral that is really just at the funeral home. It's like a memorial service, I guess. And it's not many people. Like I said, it's whoever came up, and it was just a couple handfuls of people. And the few people that my brother worked with. And like some other people that he knew, I guess, and that my parents knew, but they hadn't been there that long. And like nobody was flying up. None of his friends from home were coming up. So Father Tony was able to do the service, but we had the viewing first. And this is something, again, like I guess I wasn't prepared. And we were able to go in first before other people, and they let us see him. And I remember I lost it. I was really had a hard time. And it's the first time Michael's now seeing him because he wasn't at the hospital. And I touched my brother in the coffin, and I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't even thinking what I was supposed to expect. But I was freaked out. I guess I didn't know what happened. And he was hard and he was cold. And I couldn't handle that. I freaked. I was just like, I lost. I was crying. And again, because I didn't know. And I don't know. Maybe if someone told me, maybe I wouldn't have been that freaked out. But that was really, really hard. So we had this viewing. And it's before the service. We're sitting in the front. It's my mom, my dad, me, and Michael. And my dad, I've never really seen my dad cry. And he was crying. He cried, that night that he picked me up and we were in the hospital. He was crying and he was holding my hand. That was during when the priest was talking. And I think it was at that moment I knew that my parents were definitely broken and things were never going to be the same again. Because yes, men can cry, and I want men to cry, and they should grieve, but I never see my dad like that. And I just remember looking at him, looking at my mom, then looking to the side at my brother, and I'm holding my brother's hand, and And I was like, are we going to make it? I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't even know if I stood up. Could I stand up? If I felt like at that moment when I saw my dad and felt that, and I just realized how fragile everything was. I think at that point it was like, I don't know if anything, I can trust anything. I don't know if this, I always say with suicide loss, it's like the rug was ripped out from under you and you don't know if your foot is going to, when you put it down on the ground, is the ground going to hold you? You are so unsure of everything. I think then it really hit me sitting there. But before that incident, before the priest got up to speak, it's the viewing, so people are going up to the casket. My uncle is behind me. One of my uncles is behind me, the one closest in age. He's only 3 years older than me, and he is sobbing. We're all crying. My brother just died by suicide. This is not natural. Wasn't sick. This was sudden traumatic loss. He's crying. My grandmother says to him, "Stop your blubbering. Stop your blubbering. You're making a scene." I remember just turning around. I'm turning around now as I'm saying it. Turning around and looking at her. And I may have said something. My husband would remember if I said something. But I remember looking like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This is that whole facade that my grandmom loved to have. Like nobody had feelings. Things happen. Well, don't tell the neighbors, lie about everything, hide everything. Just was like, you can't even grieve. This got to be a joke. I think at that time too, I think for me is when I probably was like, I'm done. I'm done with all these stupid games that families play, and I'm going to speak up and I'm not going to play these games anymore. But that one got me. Like, I don't know how that made my uncle feel. I don't know if that had a lasting effect on him, but it had a lasting effect on me. That was crazy. But you know what? Looking back, that's what everybody kind of wanted, though. Once that funeral was done, they wanted us to be like, stop that blubber and get moving. And that's what it's like. It's what it's like with loss in general. But with certain kinds of losses, people want that wrapped up real quick. So I digress. I'm going to go back to the funeral. So the priest talks, and I got the courage to get up because I was not sure I was going to be able to do it. But I did. I got up and I read what I wrote about my brother. And I shared memories, shared fun memories. I shared some of the ones where he was in a little bit of trouble, but I was able to share some of them, and I was crying, and I was able to share, like, listen, we need to talk about our feelings. I think that kind of solidified too my grandmom telling my uncle basically to stop his blubbering, how I really emphasized in the eulogy how if people are feeling a certain way, they need to share it. Like, they need to talk about it. Like, this shouldn't happen. We need to listen and we need to help each other. So I was glad I was able to do that. And it wasn't easy. I cried. My parents cried. I think we cried through the whole thing. But my parents were really glad that I got up and I was able to say something. I felt like that, in a way, I was able to speak for them because they couldn't. They couldn't say anything. So I was glad I was able to do that. But while we were there too, this funeral, this whole thing is just crazy. Again, this was probably before the memorial part. It's while everyone was there, but we're sitting there. My favorite friend, the man from the funeral home, comes up and says to my mother, he wasn't, kind of whispered, but it's a small funeral home. So like everybody kind of heard it. Literally asked for the money. He was like, do you have the check? I think we had given him some beforehand. I don't know, but it was in the middle of the service. I'm pretty sure. I think that somebody said, maybe I said, like, can we do this after the service? Like, are you kidding? Like, I don't remember who said it, but someone did. This guy's got to be kidding me. He's just asked for a check in the middle of this. I don't know. I don't know how he runs a funeral home. There's no compassion, I felt like he had no brains. So we get through the funeral. It was very, very hard. Like I said, I knew in those moments, like, my family was never going to be the same. We were just completely just shattered and broken. And we're getting ready to leave. I don't even know how you say you're leaving. My brother was being cremated, so it wasn't like you went out. There was no burial or anything like that. But near the end, I guess my mom is giving him a check or whatever. And do you believe this man asks for the flowers? Now, I don't think any of us had really any intention of taking all the flowers. But he said, since you're not having a funeral or you're not having a burial, you have no need for these flowers. So would it be okay if we just keep them all here? I, again, lost it. I said, absolutely not. We will have none of that. You will have not one flower, not one petal, not one flower. My parents had a little pickup truck. I had my husband and my girlfriend. Well, he was my boyfriend at the time. And whoever else was there, I'm like, load every flower, every stem, every petal, everything is in that pickup truck. Now, did we need all them flowers? Absolutely not. Probably would have kept some of them there. I don't know. But he was not getting one of them. Not one. I cannot believe this guy asked for them flowers on top of everything else he did. He lost the body. He's calling me at the house looking for the body. He asked for the check in the middle of it. He was just so rude and ignorant why we were planning it, like how he dealt with suicide. That was the whole thing, like how he dealt with the type of death it was. And the way he talked to us was uncalled. It really was uncalled for. So that was just the last straw for me. He would have not one flower. He was not getting anything. Yeah. So we loaded all those flowers up. I can't remember what we did with them all, but we had a lot of flowers. I know that. Because, again, we didn't know how to do things, and things were a lot different then, and we were down the Keys, and there wasn't a lot of people there. I remember beforehand, I remember saying, well, don't we have, like, luncheons, dinners? Our thing was in the evening, so I'm like, aren't we supposed to have something after it? What do you do? And, again, parents are broken. So here I am, 25 years old, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. Kind of asking my friends, and I'm asking, my family that's there. I'm like, what should we do? Like, so there was a house that pretty much a lot of the people were staying at. And I just went shopping and bought stuff for us to have, like hors d'oeuvres or food. I don't know. Me and Rob and Sherry, we went and just were getting food. And I think maybe one of my uncles might have been there. I'm not quite sure. And we just got stuff just because it was just us, really. That's all. Sometimes I look back and guilt. I think, oh, maybe I should have known better. Maybe we should have just made reservations. Truth be told, nothing would have been open at that time anyway. Everything shuts down pretty early where that was. So it was good. And it was different. It was definitely different. It was hard. And I remember that night, like, people there, and I don't know, I'm sure there was some drinking. I don't remember all that, but I was glad my friends were there. But it was just all strange because, again, we didn't know, like, how do you do this? What are you supposed to do? And is there an official end to it? And I guess because it was at one of the houses where everyone was staying, it kind of made it a little bit easier, and just being there and kind of people just hanging out. So that's the funeral. Surprised that we all survived through that. And I was very grateful for, like, the people who were able to show up for me anyway, Rob and Sherry. And then the people were there for maybe a day or two and left. They had to get back to work and their jobs and home and all that. And I think that's when it really started to hit. Thank you for listening to Mending Piece by Piece podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. If you would like to subscribe to our free monthly digital newsletter that has insightful articles on loss, grief, and coping strategies, and much more, you can sign up through the website. See you in 2 weeks, and until next time, continue mending piece by piece, healing through grief, one step at a time.